So we are in this series. It's called "This House." We've said this. We want to get started, and as we do so, rather than just jumping in head first, let's kind of paint a picture. Let's sort of lay out the blueprints. Many people, you go to a church for the first time, you walk out a little more curious, maybe. Like maybe some churches you go to and you're like, I walked out, I'm not curious at all, and I ain't going back. But others you walk into and you leave and you go, man, I wish I could dig in a little bit more, like they were just kind of in the rhythm and they were going. But for us, it's new for everybody. And so we felt that it only appropriate that we say, hey, let's talk about this house, not this house, this building that we're meeting in. No. But this house in terms of the family that moves and breathes and ticks underneath of this roof. And so we've just called this series, This House, a look under the roof. And so we spent some time just sort of building our foundation. And then I want to get into a few more things. And so we're going to take 4 more weeks. For those of you who like to know where we're going, you kind of map it out, right? We're going to take 4 more weeks in this series, and I've identified some of just the 4 really big walls that we want to build and we really want to communicate, okay? This first one today is community, and it'll speak to one of our core values, which I'll get into. And then we've got a few other really significant pieces now that we've laid a firm, strong, level, solid foundation that we're going to run into. And then we're going to get to the first week of December, and I'm really excited about December. I'll let you in on this. We're going to do an Advent series. And so depending on your background, your church background, some of you might go, hey, well, I've been doing Advent since I grew up doing Advent, and leading up to preparing for Christmas, the birth of Christ. And then others would go, I haven't, I didn't really grow up. We didn't really do some of the sacred things. And so I think it's going to really be a fantastic series that'll prepare us lead us up to the most significant thing that propels everything that we do in our faith and as a church, which is the birth of Jesus. And so I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be fantastic. As always, you guys, if you have any questions, and I suspect that there would be, don't hesitate to reach out throughout the week. There's a lot on our website that you can find. There's a Connect card. Let me say this. There's a Connect card in the seat back in front of you. If you're in the front row, there's some out in the lobby at the Connect Center, okay? I always want to encourage you guys, just because that's a way for us to serve you and any questions that you might have, or if you're wanting to serve, or if you're wanting to get connected into a small group, if you have questions about who Jesus is and what that looks like in your life, there's spot on that card to kind of fill some of that out, tear it off, and then you can put those either in any of the giving stations. There's one in the back of this room, and then there's one at the Connect Center, okay? And that's a way that we can reach out and go, hey, let's serve you and help answer any questions that you might have. Sound good? You guys ready to do some work? You guys ready to do some work? Okay, I got 2 passages for us this morning. One of them is going to be in Acts chapter 2, and one of them is going to be in Ephesians chapter 4. I've got the page numbers on the screen but before we get to those, but I like to kind of steer you in those directions so that you're ready, because sometimes I'm just not going to stop. I'm just going to keep going. If you're trying to get there before me, I'm going to be done reading it by the time you find it. So put a finger there in Acts, put a finger there in Ephesians, and then we're going to get to work. I like watching documentaries. I'm that guy whose house you don't want to go over when I say, hey, you want to come over and watch a movie? Right. So I get on Netflix, I'll be like, man, there's a good documentary. And I found this documentary a couple years ago, actually. And it's a documentary, it's called Happy. Has anybody ever seen this documentary? Just curious, for real. There's a documentary, okay. It's like clouds, like the clouds are in a happy face on the cover. It's, okay. Nope, good, this will fit. It's a documentary called Happy, and basically the entire purpose of this documentary is that they travel around the world to try to answer the question, what makes human beings happy? What makes people the happiest? And what are some of the environments? Is it cultural? Is it material? Is it like what are some of the things? So they went to everything from the middle of the most crowded, populated cities and just started doing these studies to go, what makes these people happy? What brings joy into their lives? And they're like, well, people in the city, like that's a challenge. They're not happy. And then they went to the suburbs, right? And of course we're all going like it's the suburbs is where it's at, right? Like boom, that's where life is. And well, we would be wrong, right? Because the suburbs then are where we can ultimately go to hide. right? We put the fences up, sure. Like we pull around the street. We got them tinted windows. Nobody going to see who's in that car. Hit the button on the garage door, pull that thing in, close the garage door. I mean, the garage door is the biggest killer of community on the planet, right? Because you can go home, not even say hi to your neighbors, enter into your house, go to sleep, and you don't even have to be exposed to sunlight to walk, right? And so those people weren't happy. Like I had to say, like it's awful because like we're in suburbia, right? Like I've got a 2-car garage. I'm guilty of this, but it's too full, so I'm not parked. I got to get out of my car and walk to the front door. So I'm working on it. But then they would go to these villages, these far out, farthest to reach villages where people live in close proximity with each other, where they have no choice based on some of the resources that they have, or I should say the lack of resources that they have to live in close proximity. They have to share things with each other. Like I'm not even making this up. Like when we go to Nicaragua, this is crazy, and forgive me if this is over the top, okay? But like we'll go into Nicaragua, and we'll see a mother nursing a child. 10 minutes later, we'll see a different mother nursing the same child. 10 minutes later, I'll see a different mother nurse. So they're like, hey, we're all going to pitch in to feed this kid. Like what if you were just like your kid was hungry and you had to go knock on the door and be like, hey, mama, right? Hey, feed my kid for a second, right? But we see this different type of interaction, and what they discovered in this was that it's in some of those places where the need for each other to sustain life is far greater than any other area, that those are the happiest places on the planet. Right? So then part of the work of the film is they'll follow these several psychologists and even some scientists around. And one thing that they said in this documentary was the most fascinating to me. They said that when we commune with others, when we eat, when we laugh, when we play, when we celebrate, when we love, when we serve alongside in community with others, that there's a chemical reaction literally taking place in our brains. There's something biological that's happening in those moments when we experience these interactions. They said this: a chemical called dopamine, many of you are probably familiar with this, a chemical called dopamine is released into the brain, creating a feeling of happiness or contentment. So when we play with other human beings, when we are served by other human beings, when we get to serve or meet the needs of other human beings, this chemical reaction biologically is taking place in our brains. It's this release of dopamine. What I find really fascinating is that here, to continue what they're saying, an interesting connection here is that it's the same chemical released in the brain by the use of cocaine, meth, and even some antidepressants. Yet the same natural reaction takes place when we experience healthy community with others. So you want to get high? I should be careful, right? What's it look like to live, work, play, celebrate, laugh, love, and serve alongside the people that we're daily surrounded by? And literally, science would tell us that when that happens, it's better than a high, a chemical-induced high. Isn't that crazy? You think about this word community, and I love this. You like think about the word community. Like spell it out in your brain. Picture the word community. Okay, at least in the English language, we get two pieces to it. We have commune, right, and we have unity, right. We have commune and we have unity, community. And I think that's really fascinating. And if we trace the roots of the word all the way back, we step out of the English language and we take it all the way back into where some of that comes from. The word literally means to come together. The word literally means to come together. Now it's interesting because as a church, we use a lot of community language, right? In fact, one of our core values here at City Life is we would say that we're committed to being an irresistible community. This is language that you would hear all the time. You can go on our website, you can go into some things about us, and we've written up there's a whole post just on what it looks like for us to be this irresistible community. So it means that we long to be a community that is so contagious, it's so compelling, that people can't help but want to be a part of it. It's irresistible. And when they peer into the community, into the chemical releases that are taking place amongst our interactions and times together, they're going to want some of that. And saying that out loud, I also want to acknowledge that community, living in, developing, entering into, it can be really hard work, right? It can be exhausting work. It can be painful work. It can be unpleasant work. Sort of like it is sometimes trying to experience community with the people that I already live with and call family. Right? Let's be honest. It can be equally as challenging. And we're going, man, if that's what it looks like, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. But it's a necessary work. And for us as a church, it's a non-negotiable work. And so Ronald Rolheiser, he's a bit of a mystic writer. I'm going to quote him several times because in preparing I came alongside some of his writing and it moved me in some ways. But he wrote a book, it's called The Holy Longing, okay? And he says this, one of several things that I'll quote this morning, but he says, "We are essentially social by nature. To be human is to be with others. We wake up to a consciousness not as an isolated ego, but as one among many. Our quest for God must be consistent then with our nature. Hence, it must have, as a non-negotiable part, a communitarian dimension. Ecclesiology, church, by definition, is precisely that. Walking to God within a community." So to me, that means that church is far more than an event that gathers people on a Sunday morning. Right? It's a collection of people who come together to walk together toward God, to wrestle together, to struggle together, to be curious together, to discover together, to explore together the character and purposes of God. So when we think about this, I think we get some funny pictures in the Bible, like almost literally like a hilarious picture. It's like when we think about the disciples that Jesus gathered together around himself to walk through life with, and of course to hand over the keys to the church and go, hey, do this so that city life one day down the road could be modeled after how you go and do these things. So he pulled together some tax collectors, right, like some major Pharisees, some hypocrites, like and then some fishermen, right, so that they were just kind of uneducated guys that were just out doing. They're just trying to catch fish, and here's the bundle that he puts together, right? So he walks with them, leaves them, says, "All right, boys, get after it. Let's do this church." And then we get this picture, though, of what this unlikely community looked like for them in the early days. And so now go ahead and open that up to Acts chapter 2. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. We've spent some time here in the past. And to be quite honest with you, this is one of my favorite passages. This is one of my favorite pictures of the church in the New Testament. And so we're going to spend a majority of our time with the Ephesians. But I want us to take in this picture. Acts chapter 2. Verse 42, right? Like Jesus leaves, he ascends to heaven, leaves the boys. He's like, hey, get after it. Spirit comes, gives them power then to go and build the church. And here's this first picture that we get of what it looked like. It says, "And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common." Wonder what that would be like. "And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need." And some of us would go, well, that's just different. That's just different. That's not how it worked. I've seen it. I've been there. I've seen it happen in one of the happiest cultures on the planet, but one of the poorest. I keep going. I told you I wasn't going to preach on this one. Verse 46, "And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people." And I love this piece. "And then the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved." And so it wasn't just this picture of like, all right, it's time to go over to Matthew's house. here we go, checking around, nobody's here. Okay, so let's do it. Let's do this. Because if that were the case, then how would day by day the Lord add to their number? So there's two pictures here, right? Now we're building the walls on this foundation, which is Jesus, right? We see this irresistible community, do we not? I'm telling you what, I want to go party with these guys, right? Something told me there was some good food on that table, and it was getting a little rowdy up in that prayer meeting. Like, sign me up. Okay, take me back. So there was this irresistible community, but also coupled with this invitational environment. Hear this. We don't want to just be an invitational community so that the same seats are filled every single day, every single Sunday. We want to be an invitational community so that we would continue to see the Lord add day by day, daily, to our number those who are being saved, those who are putting their faith in Jesus Christ. I love this. We talked about this in my small group a while back. Somebody said to Rick Warren, like, what's your favorite size? What was your favorite size church? And he said, well, man, if I could go back, I would just go back and I would lock the whole thing. Rick Warren's the pastor of Saddleback out in California. It's one of the largest churches in the United States. I think well over now 30,000 people in attendance. He said, man, if I could really go back again, I'd put it right at about 300. I'm like, my favorite size, 300. He's like, really? Like, right up to about 300? I kind of knew everybody's name. I was like, how in the world did you do that? Sorry if I don't. Okay. He's like, I can remember everybody's name. I remember everybody's dog's name, everybody's kid's name. Like, right about 300, man. Like, the potlucks were really good. Like, everything was just on point, right? And he said, but we just didn't get to stay there. Well, why didn't you just put the brakes on then? If you felt like you were wired in so many ways to lead at 300, why don't you just put the brakes on right there, Rick, and just maintain that community? He said, because as long as people didn't know Jesus, we still had work to do. And so some would come in here and say, you know why I like City Life? It's a small little church plant. But make no mistake, it's a small little church plant with a lot of vision. Okay? And so as long as you and I keep walking out our front doors and driving on the street and going into our workplaces every single day, and there are people who still do not know Jesus, we've got more work to do, and we'll keep raising money for chairs if I have to. Can I get an amen? Okay, let's make sure we're clear on that. So what does God want then for the church and the community of the church? Specifically, what does a healthy community, what does an irresistible community, an invitational community look like? And I think Paul paints us a little bit of a picture. And so I'm going to go kind of a different angle and bring in a different passage into this conversation of community that we may not be familiar with. And it's Ephesians chapter 4. And I'll start in verse 1. To be fair, here's what I'm glad you're there. We're going to come back to, so this is these Bibles that we've got right here. These are the English Standard Version. I'm going to take our first 6 verses out of the Message, right? And so before you walk out or email me something really nasty about not preaching out of the actual Word of God, just know that there's an ESV under every chair in here because we preach out of that. But I think every once in a while I'll just go like, man, was there some other ways to see this? How could we really understand and drop a layer deeper into this? And so I think the Message does a pretty good job of that. Okay, so the first little bit, I'm going to read through it, and then I'm going to highlight a few things. We'll keep going. Verse 1, and this is on the screen, and if you've got really good vision, you'll be able to see it. In light of all this, Paul says, here's what I want you to do. Right, so he's writing to the church at Ephesus. Church, listen up. All right. Well, I feel like this fits, and I feel like we could preach on this morning. In light of all this, here's what I want you to do, church. While I'm locked up here, a prisoner for the master, I want you to get out there and walk. Better yet, run! It was an exclamation mark. I'm just trying to read grammatically, right? On the road God called you to travel. I don't want any of you sitting around on your hands. I don't want anyone strolling off down some path that goes nowhere. And mark that you do this with humility and discipline, not in fits and starts, but steadily, pouring yourselves out for each other in acts of love, alert at noticing differences, and quick at mending fences. Isn't that cool? Just kind of take a different tone to what we would read. And so walk through this. Look at some of the instructions, some of the characteristics, we'll call them, of what Paul is saying. Hey, church, this is what I want you to look like. Okay? First of all, ain't no one going to be sitting around on their hands doing nothing. Right? And I love this because this kind of takes some of the burden off my shoulders. Like, hey, like the only one in the church doing the work isn't the pastor and the team. Ain't nobody sitting around on our hands. We all serve, we all give, we all go together, going together, community together. All right? Sorry about that. We'll just make, everybody good? Okay. No worries. Church plant. No one's sitting around on their hands. Then he says, no strolling off on roads that go nowhere. Love that. A focus and a commitment to the mission. And nobody's going to be going like, well, you know what, I'm going to go to, we should, you know what? And what's the vision? It's to know, live, and tell the love story of Jesus. And so that's where we're going. So everything's in line with that. No road here, no road here. Like, y'all, here's the road that we're on. It's a vision. It's our mission. That's where we're at. Everyone's on board. Everyone's in it and active because no one's sitting around on their hands. And let me be real quick. It's okay to come to church and to recover in some ways, right? To kind of find my place in just this, like, man, I just need a minute. I need to be nurtured. I need to receive for a minute. I think that's okay, right? But I don't think it's okay for us to stay there for year after year after year, right? And so then we come to this place then in maturity and in our growth where we stand up together and we go, right? And then he says, do this with humility and discipline. Humility, like that's a whole series. That's a whole series. Right? But he says, do this with this selflessness, with this sacrificial leading. Like there's no experts in this. We all get to walk in this alongside together. Right? And then he says, not only do it in humility, but do this with discipline. So the word discipline, I love this word discipline. It literally means training for godliness. So think about next time you're whipping your kids, right? Train you for godliness, right? That's probably not going to work. But it even talks about that in Hebrews, that we discipline out of love to train up in godliness. Isn't that wild? But that we would be trained, there would be an intentionality with spiritual growth. That's what that means. And he says, not in fits and starts, which that's kind of interesting, kind of poetic there a little bit, not in fits and starts. I think what he's saying is not as emotionally charged, not as inconsistent, not as unstable, but like emotionally healthy. Together in humility, I think what we get then is away from fits and starts. But he says, not in fits and starts, but in peace. And I think, I'll say this, I know that when I'm emotionally healthy, let me be the first in the room to say it takes work, doesn't it? But when I'm emotionally healthy, and I'm on my foundation, the foundation is Jesus, it's solid, I'm at peace. There's a great deal of peace. And then he says, steadily. And so what creates a steadiness in you, church? I think this is where we come in and we say steadily, like we're going to need some systems, we're going to need some plans and some practices to try to bring some of these things together so that we can be steadily moving forward, sending, going, serving, loving, telling together. And doing all of these things so that we can, he says, pouring yourself out for each other in acts of love. Pouring yourself out for each other in acts of love. So, let me bring this over here. Woo. So, just so that there's not confusion in this, right? This may seem elementary, but pouring comes with its own description. It looks like this. Okay? So we're pouring ourselves out for each other in acts of love, right? Some of us, to be fair, like if we're being honest, we don't do this in acts of love. We like to take what we have, the love that we have to give, and go, hey man, come here. You need some? Oh no, remember that time in 3rd grade? No, right? We portion it out a little bit, walk up and be like, oh, hey, what's up? Like, you look like somebody I'm going to give you, you know what? That was really nice what you did for my family last week. That was good stuff, right? And so we like to portion out our love. And Paul's not saying like, hey, portion out your love for each other, church. He's saying pour it out. Sorry, did I get you? Okay, we good. And then some of us, if we're being really honest, we go, well, I don't even like to just kind of look around for people to pour my love out to. Like, I like to go and just drip some people. Like, how you doing over here? You all right, you get some of that? Good. A little love here? Like, there you go. Right? And so we mistaken this, and we go, so that all of this, not strolling out, no one's sitting on our hands, in humility and discipline, not in fits and starts, steadily, so that we can pour yourselves out for each other in acts of love. How's that picture? Does that work? And I think oftentimes we say, well, I need everyone else to pour themselves out for me. And then what happens is we just kind of sit around and go, where's the love for me? Who's pouring themselves out for me? Ain't nobody pouring. I'm getting like droplets. I'm just getting portions. And nobody like, I need this. No. Church, we need this. We will pour out ourselves in acts of love for the church, right? And so we begin to unravel when somebody fails to pour out their love for us, and we see this then revealed in our lives. We see it open up or just show ourselves that we're more takers than we are givers, right? Givers pour. Givers pour. Takers just walk around flinging droplets on people, sucking the rest of the water out of everyone else's pitcher. But givers pour. Larry Crabb, he's an author and a counselor. I love that he points this out. He says, we almost never speak words that are formed in the center of our soul and pour out from our being with power and a sense of life. And we almost never hear words that stir life within us, that pour hope into those empty spaces deep inside, filled only with fear and fury and frustration. Let's finish that out from the Message. Verses 4 through 6, and then we'll wrap it up from the ESV, verses 11 through 16. But then after Paul says, pouring yourself out for each other in acts of love, he says this, you were all called to travel on the same road and in the same direction, so stay together, community. So stay together, come together, both outwardly and inwardly. You have one master, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who rules over all, works through all, and is present in all. We talked about that last week, the preeminence of Christ. He's first and foremost in all things. Here it is again. And works through all and is present in all. Everything you are and think and do is permeated with oneness. So good. And so Paul says, in and through this passage in Ephesians, that the community that is the church ought to look different. And so I want to put all that on the shelf, and we'll come back and we'll wrap that piece up. And I want to pull another piece off the shelf here for a minute. If you're compartmentalizing, taking notes, jump into this for a second. I want to talk about some of the things, what prevents us from being a healthy community and thriving in it. Okay. We cannot pour out acts of love toward one another if we remain alone, unknown, unexplored, undiscovered, untouched. We cannot either pour out or be poured onto if we isolate ourselves from a healthy community. Community does not happen when we isolate. Back to Rolheiser, second of three quotes that I have for us from him. But he says this, To attempt to make spirituality a private affair is to reject part of our very nature and to walk inside of a loneliness that God Himself has damned. And yet people both inside and outside of the church, they continue to isolate, continue to walk through life alone, apart from the love and care of other peoples. And why? Why do people avoid community? How do people avoid pouring themselves out in love or avoid love being poured into them? And I want to give us three things. Write these three things down. Write down control, fear, and denial. Control, fear, and denial is a sure recipe for isolation, which robs the health of any community. Okay? And so control, why do we control? At the end of the day, this is a whole nother piece, right? But why do we control? Because we'd rather be the emperor of a one-person empire. And if I can't dictate what happens next, if I can't react to or predict the outcomes that I long for in my life, if I lose my grip on any of these things, well, you're losing control. And when I lose control, it's because I'm not seeing what I wanted for this one-person show. There's no community in that. And so control will cause us to isolate. It will rob us. And then the next thing's fear, right? What does fear do? We fear being in community because we're terrified of what would happen if we were really known. And if I'm going to give myself to this community, I'm probably going to have to play ball. And I don't know, man, they're going to see me. They're going to hear. They might hear my story. I'm out. Can't have it. Fear. I'm terrified of what would happen if people actually knew more about me. I'm terrified of what it would look like if they knew why they were actually loving me, so we think. And then denial. Because we become crippled by the lie that says isolation is the best remedy for sin. Man, I'm holding on to things. There's some things in my life that I'm not proud of. I'm guilty. And rather than just being guilty and giving that guilt to Jesus on the cross, we hold it and we bottle it up inside. Then it becomes shame, self-shame. And we shame ourselves so badly that we don't want to then go before other people who carry this image that they're a healthy community. Well, they're not going to need me because I'm carrying X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to deny my need for community because at the end of the day, it'll expose who I really am. Control, fear, and denial. Rollheiser, last time, I promise. Either that or you're going to go buy the book, and it's so good. He says this: church is not about a few like-minded individuals coming together for mutual support. It is about millions and millions of different kinds of persons. Hear that. Different kinds of persons transcending their differences so as to become a community beyond temperament, beyond race, ideology, gender, language, and background. And here it is. The church community is to gather around the person of Jesus and the sharing of His Spirit. The church community is to gather around the person of Jesus and the sharing of His Spirit. So good. That's our purpose. That's the basis. That's the foundation for our community. Good thing is we're building that foundation on the person of Jesus and the sharing of His Spirit, and so we can build an irresistible invitational community. Come on. I got excited. But what happens when it does? What happens as a result of a healthy, growing, pouring out type of community, right? A community that gathers around the person of Jesus, a know, live, tell type of community. And finally, Paul then gives us the picture of that in the rest of our passage, Ephesians 4, verse 11 through 16. You can find that in the Bibles that you have there. And he says this: and He gave the apostles and the prophets and the evangelists, the shepherds and the teachers, to equip the saints for the work of ministry. All right, that's all of us, y'all. We don't got time. For the building up of the body, for building up the body of Christ, until we all attain to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to mature manhood, To the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. He's talking about like so that we can grow, so that we may be mature. And then he says, so that we may no longer be children tossed to and fro by the waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by human cunning, by craftiness and deceitful schemes. Rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into Him who is the head, into Christ. From whom the whole body, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up, so that it pours itself out in love. And again, too often, practically speaking, I think we rely on the sermon, or we rely on Sunday, or we rely on the pastor, we rely on the kids' ministry, we rely on the student ministry or the worship team to bring the music, and we rely on these things rather than saying, let's come together, a healthy community amongst each other, bring those gifts that God has given you to the table so that we would be irresistible, church. And then as irresistible, it would be so invitational that people couldn't help but want to be a part of it. But not only that, people aren't just going to hear about it. No, you're going to go and tell them because you're not sitting on your hands. Goodness gracious. And the last thing I want to talk about then, more practically speaking, is the container for this irresistible community. The container for this at City Life is not just seen in who shows up in our and in the interaction that takes place in this room on a Sunday morning. The container for this type of healthy community goes beyond this room, and it's experienced in what we just simply call our small groups. And so I'll say this all the time, that small groups are really the lifeblood of our church. So we gather here together on a Sunday for the teaching of God's Word and the worship of His name. But then we live these things out in small communities where we would know, live, and tell the love story of Jesus, not just from this room, but in relationship with each other with each other and other people. And that becomes the container for these things. And so we have a big vision for small groups. It'd be hypocritical to say, like, well, come to a small group. We don't really care about them, but it's just we got to have them. But small groups are hard, right? They're icky, they're grimy, they're messy. Why? Because they involve people. If we could just take the people out of small groups, they'd be a whole lot easier, right? And we got to go do work, and it's exhausting, and I don't have energy for it. I've been working all day, and I just don't have it in me. And you want me to be vulnerable with this? Oh, well, I just don't. And then we say, no, we're gonna commit to these things because we believe that that's where the life flows out of our church. And so I would say this: that our small groups are not just Bible studies. Well, you want to do a Bible study, like it might be a while before we just start doing Bible studies, okay? But our small groups aren't just Bible studies. They're not just affinity groups, okay? So our small groups aren't just so that people can gather around this commonality of playing guitar together. That's what we mean by that. So they're not just Bible studies. They're not just affinity groups. They're not support groups, right? No, like a small group is when this healthy community lives out this life together, and it becomes contagious and irresistible. It's going to take a whole lot more than a Bible study to do that, at least in this town. And so I want to invite everybody, of course, to be a part of a small group. Our prayer is that they would be healthy small groups, that they would flourish, that those would be invitational environments, that no small group is closed. There's no such thing as a closed door when it comes to our small groups. People argue this, people don't like this. Well, how am I supposed to be known and loved? Well, we don't just hold that for ourselves, right? So my small group's going to grow. Right now it's growing. We launched this church and I got like 30 people in my small group. It's rowdy. But we're going to multiply. We don't split. That's like a bad word to me, right? We're not splitting anything. We're multiplying the health of what's taking place in our small group, so then it can go and continue to reproduce in other places with other people. And so that's what we're going to do. And we're going to celebrate it when it's time to multiply. I'll tell you what, there's going to be a lot of good food on that table. We're going to I don't know. I don't even know. I can't really tell you how I party. It's just between me and my small group right now. But it's going to happen, okay? And we're going to celebrate that. Community is not built in a day. Right? And we've already said it's not easy. It takes time. It takes patience. And some would go, Aaron, I just don't know how I'm going to do that. I don't know how I'm going to come alongside others. I don't know how I'm going to pour myself out. It's too risky. It's putting too much on the line. You don't know my story. I can't do it. Well, there's one who poured out everything for us. And so we have this model. And if you're new here, just make no mistake, like the conclusion here on Sunday mornings is the same every week. Because Jesus gives us this model for what a healthy community looks like together. Because He shows us what it's like to be poured out. Completely poured out. He poured out everything in His love for us. The Bible tells us that when He was dying on the cross, and the Roman guards speared Him and speared His heart, and it said that blood and water flowed. Sorry for that picture, but it's a picture of love being poured out for me. It's a picture of love being poured out for you. So if Jesus pours out His love for me and you, what more can I do than to first and foremost pour my love back out for Jesus, and second, pour my love out in acts of love for my brothers and sisters in the church? And the question ultimately just boils down to, does that mean something to have that love poured out on you? Will you guys bow your heads? And take us just to this posture of reflection. We do this week to week, and I want you to imagine something for a second. What would it be like to be free? Not in isolation, not lonely. I'm not talking about having friends. But what would it look like to be free of control and free of fear and free of denial and ultimately free of loneliness and isolation? I think it's no accident that Jesus created and left for us a community. And then He modeled for that community the pouring out of His blood so that we might get it. And so, we're going to build this irresistible community on this foundation of Jesus. But church, we cannot do it if Jesus isn't the foundation, not of just my life, not just the worship team's life, not just the kids director's life, but of the lives of the people in this church. And so it's not a profound question, it's a simple question. Do you love Jesus? Does it mean something that He poured out His love and His life for you? And then if it does, join us in community and let's live in that. Let's play in that together. And if it doesn't and you wonder what would that be like, man, stay in that, sit in that, write on that, reflect on that, pray about that. Because we've got some stations around the room where you can express some of those things. There's a prayer station on the side of the room with a cross and some pillows where you can just kneel and you can just plead with God whatever's on your heart. There's a space to take communion, and we don't pass communion. We believe this is a response. You can worship in this way. Jesus said to His disciples, as often as you gather together, do this in remembrance of me. This is my body that was lived perfectly and sinless for you. This is my blood that was shed as a sacrifice for you. And so if you feel led and you love Jesus, go back to the table and remember. There's a couple other stations, one where you can journal and write and reflect, one where you can give. We give as worship. Father, we love You. And I thank You for Your word, and I thank You for everything in it, and that You shape us by it, that You don't leave anyone alone by it. I thank You that we have these pictures. There's so many pictures in Your word of of what it looks like to walk through life together and to have this hope that we might actually be able to do it. And so, Father, I'm believing. I'm always going to believe. I'm going to confidently and firmly believe that you are creating in this church, this expression of your kingdom right here called City Life, a solid community, an irresistible, invitational community, so that as long as my neighbors don't know Jesus, we'll keep going. Father, would it not just be me standing on that truth? And would you shape us all? Would you love us all? Would you pour it out for us that we might do the same? I thank you for your blood and for the cross. We love you. We love you. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.